How much longer may you and I expect to live? This tank may hold part of that secret.
From the colleges and universities of the nation, CBS Television brings you the search to know and understand man and his work, the search for a richer, happier life for all.
I'm Eric Severai. Of all the instruments in your doctor's little black bag, this one is probably the most familiar, the stethoscope. It's a simple tool. It has one purpose, to magnify the sound of your heartbeat so that the physician can judge whether your heart is comparatively normal. It would be convenient if the sound of your heartbeat were the only evidence that medical science needed to be able to tell you that your cardiovascular system is in good shape, or if it isn't, what to do about it. Unfortunately, the job is more complicated than that. Cardiovascular ailments continue to take an increasingly heavy toll of American lives, 1 million this year. And medical science is coming to the view that the evidence offered by your heartbeat may be just the smallest part of the job. The story we want to tell you today is really sort of a detective story, and it has a complicated plot. The killer is cardiovascular disease, heart failure as some of us call it. The victims or potential victims are you and me. And the detectives are a team of scientists operating at the University of Minnesota, out at Gate 27 under the Minnesota football stadium. The scientific team isn't operating alone. 500 normal, healthy men of Minneapolis and St. Paul have been serving them as human guinea pigs since 1948. Reporting in small groups each day, these volunteers are being checked and studied before they develop heart trouble. In time, half of them may be expected to get it in some form, many of them to die of it. It's the aim of the scientists at Gate 27 to find out why. What have overwork and tension got to do with heart trouble? What about overweight? Is there a heart trouble personality? What are the best ways of spotting heart trouble before it sets in? That's the kind of thing this laboratory, headed by Dr. Ansel Keys, is trying to find out. And let's let Dr. Keys tell us more about it.
The facts are simple. You know the chief killer of Americans is cardiovascular disease, disorders and degeneration of the heart and blood vessels. Here are vital statistics. They show that this problem here in America is the worst in the world. It's not merely a problem of old people. The death rate among comparatively young men is shocking. It's not a reflection on our doctors or hospitals. Probably our mode of life and our diet are involved. But the trouble is, we just don't know enough about it. It strikes without warning. Of 10 men, we can expect 5 to get it. But we can't say who, or when, or why.
Dr. Keys?
Yes, Flaminio?
These 500 men you are testing, they are from all kinds of people?
With limited resources of staff and time, we couldn't study all types. And we couldn't cover the whole lifetimes of individuals. So we started with 300 business executives and professional men from 45 to 55 years old. And to get an idea of such men 25 years younger, we selected 200 university students.
You call 10 men each day?
Generally 10 at a time, and they hit 8, 10, 12 stations, depending on the items being tested. Some are repeated each year, and some change. They start over here like this gentleman. Hello, Fred. Excuse me.
Doc.
How are you?
Oh, my, you're supposed to tell me after I get through this meal. We'll see you at the conference.
Right.
Dr. Keys, if
Yes?
I can ask, of these 300 men, you had the luck?
As of now, there have been 4 deaths in 5 years. 1 in an accident and 3 from heart failure. 12 men have moved from completely normal to definite heart disease. And I suppose another dozen are getting into trouble. But this is much better than we had any right to expect. We hope it stays that way. As far as the tools and techniques of investigation go, many are easily available. Some we've had to design and make in our own workshop here. Some we've tried and put aside as we've developed simpler means of getting the same results. We need measurements that can be repeated systematically, ones that are characteristic of a man and that mark him off from others. At this stage, we're sure that the recognition and measurement of the differences between individuals is of first importance. For example, Dr. Taylor has a minor challenge for you. Are you ready, Henry?
One of these men is an Olympic athlete. The other has just finished a valuable paper on the agglomeration of fine particles in iron ore. Can you tell which is which?
Will you step forward, Carl? Back in 1924, Dr. Carl Anderson set a world's record for the high hurdles. And Dick Burlingame has just taken his master's degree in the School of Mines here at the University of Minnesota. The obvious point is that first appearances may be deceptive. Thank you, gentlemen. And now, Dr. Taylor, for one more example.
This time, it's a plain matter of weight. By a system of measurements that we find useful here, one of these men weighs 4 times as much as the other.
Judge, it's a pleasure that I yield to you.
Mr. Nelson's right. By our densitometer down the stairs, Judge Rogers outweighs him almost 4 to 1. But we'll have to explain that when we get down there.
Well, I guess we better get started, hadn't we, Dr. Keith?
If you will, Judge. Identification can be made in many ways, some more accurate than others. Dr. Simonson might more easily recognize a man from his electrocardiogram than from his picture. Mrs. Foster would prefer a picture, but not the ordinary kind. Dr. Joseph Anderson might ask for a chemical reaction before being sure. By choice, as a clinical psychiatrist, Dr. Donald Hastings would rather meet and talk with a person whose characteristics he wanted to record. Henry Taylor would want his man on a ballistocardiograph table. Dr. William Maloney, as a physician, employs the direct methods many of you are more familiar with. But all of us here are interested to some degree in all the varied ways by which we can hope to look at and know a man.
Dr. Keyes, a question. What are some of the methods you use to discover the condition of these people's hearts to begin with?
X-ray is important. Even though we only see the shadow of the heart, its shape and motion tell us much, particularly when we measure them. At the back of the eyeball is the only set of arteries that can be seen clearly without surgery.
I see, and this gives you a good view of the circulatory system.
The chemistry of the blood is complicated, but a promising lead for predicting coronary heart disease comes from cholesterol measurements in the blood. We are finding the blood cholesterol is influenced by the diet. There are many indirect ways of learning about the state of the heart and the circulation.
Morning, Doctor. Are you ready for me yet?
Good morning. Not in 3 or 4 minutes, but come right in, please.
Well, fine.
We are now entering one of the special testing rooms where the men are placed under various conditions and their heart reactions compared.
V4.
Dr. Simonson, you take these cardiogram readings from the chest and the arms and the legs, but don't they all mean the same thing?
Basically, yes. Dr. Schmidt will be glad to explain it to you.
Be glad to try.
Fine.
You see this model of the human heart, how different it looks when viewed from different directions. We'd like to see the corresponding picture of the electrical activity of the human heart. And theoretically, it should look something like this wire model in 3 dimensions. Now, we're rapidly developing an instrument to do this and to give us a direct 3D picture of the whole heart's activity. But until this instrument is generally available, we'll have to satisfy ourselves with 1 or 2 dimensional shadows of this picture, something like those that this would cast on a piece of paper. Let me show you that. You see, pictures like these would correspond to the various positions that are measured on you. by Dr. Simonson.
I see, Doctor. What you mean, then, is when we take these cardiogram readings, if we just took them from the leg or from the arm or from the chest, then we'd lose the other parts of the heart activity.
You'd miss all of the electrical activity except that which is shown in one of these shadows.
I see. Well, thank you, Barry.
You're welcome.
Excuse me.
We are through now, and I'll be ready for you in a minute.
Fine, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. How much longer has Mr. Berman come to walk?
Oh, about 4 minutes more.
Thank you.
Mr. Barry is about to have an electrocardiogram taken, recording the action of his heart while relaxed. He will later be subjected to physical exertion and his heart tested under those conditions.
We are ready now for your first tracing address, Mr. Barry.
The doctor is marking the positions where the electrical contacts will be made.
Chest lead V1. V2. V3. Chest lead V4. That's all. We are through now, Mr. Barry.
Testing the heart before and after a measured stress discloses many hidden faults. That's Burlingame's expired breath filling the metal bell. That's measured too.
Pretty good workout?
No breakfast. It surely was.
Oh, huh? Ready for me, Doctor?
Sure am. But of course, stresses can be of many kinds, some less easy to measure than others. At this station, combining temporarily the duties of a psychologist with his own function as a psychiatrist, Dr. Hastings is taking a personality inventory that makes up part of our record on each man.
On this test, you realize, of course, that there are no right or wrong answers, and we would like you to answer as promptly and as accurately as you can for yourself. And just to be sure that you understand the test, I wonder if you'd pick out several questions at random.
I often check twice to see whether the door is locked or not. True, not sure, or false. Yeah, I guess I do that all right. Anytime I have a chance, I'll go to a party. No, not anymore. Time was when I'd... But you want an answer as of now. I frequently have trouble making up my mind about things. Well, I don't say I can't make up my mind when I have to, but, well, you could take this 2 or 3 ways on little things, or maybe even...
The question is, do you frequently have trouble making up your mind?
All right, I guess I can't deny it.
point of these pictures is to call out your spontaneous reaction patterns to them. You can help us most by suggesting your first impressions about each picture, who the people are, what they're doing, any story you'd care to invent about them. Now take this one, for instance.
Anything I think of?
Anything you wish.
Well, it looks like a young wife who might have opened a letter that she didn't want her husband to see. She's sort of secretive about it.
Her own mail?
Possibly.
Thank you. Now this picture?
Well, it looks like a young man who is sitting high up. Looks like he's looking out over the city, possibly from the Fauché Tower here in Minneapolis.
Just enjoying the view of the city?
He looks like he's giving things a once-over.
You say the man might be courting this girl?
No. But wait a minute, he's got a pipe in his mouth. He's probably married to her.
It's a man and his secretary. And whatever he said must have hit her right in the teeth.
What does this picture remind you of?
A country kid trying to slip out the window a secret way to go fishing.
Will he get caught when he gets back?
Not if I can help it.
Well, it's an air raid. I've seen the magnesium flares myself. Now, wait a minute,
It's not an air raid?
No. No, he's looking out the window. Something bright and good. There may be trouble in the city, but he's looking out toward the mountains. Figures everything's going to be all right. Yeah, everything's going to be okay.
In this laboratory, Dr. Henry Taylor is preparing to take a Ballisto cardiogram. The test is based upon a principle discovered 76 years ago by a Scottish physiologist when he suspended a bed from the ceiling with ropes and found that the bed would move in rhythm with a man's beating heart. The bed here is supported on fine springs, and a record is taken of the motion imparted to the bed by the subject's pumping heart. Dr. Taylor, what do these records tell you?
We are beginning to find that these ballistic records are related to age and to the state of the heart. The true meaning of records of this kind will only be found by long-term follow-up studies on the same men. Let me show you how we make these records. The recoil of this table from the force of the heart pumping blood is only about 3/1000ths of an inch. Now, this tiny motion is accurately magnified by this optical system. The moving spot of light has to be photographed in total darkness. The light is moving in response to the beat of the heart. We record the heart sound at the same time to identify the action of the heart valves.
Now we're down in the densitometer room, and Dr. Keyes is about to explain how they measure the weight of a man.
Since overweight apparently influences the aging of the heart and blood vessels, it's important to analyze precisely what we mean by overweight. For example, are we talking about fat? Are we talking about muscle and bone? Here, let me show you how we get at this. A football player in good training may outweigh a desk worker of the same height by 20 pounds and still be far less fat. The athlete's overweight is muscle. The light worker and heavy eater is overweight because of excess fat. And these two kinds of overweight have very different meanings. How can we decide and measure which is which? Now, fat is lighter than water. A chunk of lard or suet will When we weigh a man completely underwater, we get a measure of the proportion of fat to muscle and bone in his body. But we must correct for the buoyancy of the air in the lungs. This means we have to measure the amount of air in the lungs at the moment the weight is recorded underwater. Dick Burlingame is getting oxygen now to flush out all of the air that was in his lungs when he was weighed. It's all collected in the metal bell. It takes 7 minutes to flush out the lungs completely. About half the total fat of the body is right under the skin. By comparing the results of underwater weighing with skin fold measurements, we're beginning to learn how to estimate the total fat by the simple caliper. Okay, Dick? 9.2, Walt. 11.8. But for some time to come, we'll have to go on checking the underwater weighing against the caliper to find the reliability of this simple method.
Well, does that mean we will go on dunking again next year, Doctor?
You go on dunking.
And each year, in the general interview, we try to keep up with a man's changing habits in a number of fields.
Still like apples as much as ever?
Haven't got one in your pocket, have you, Doctor?
Sorry, you have to pass through 3 more stations, you know. Now, physical activity, any change since last year?
Practically no change. I go in for a little mild exercise like tennis, but mixed doubles, though.
And so the work goes on at the laboratory. Measure, record, compare. Each man against the hundreds of others, each man against himself in years past and years to come. How quickly does the circulatory system react to external changes of heat and cold? What does this tell us about the condition of the blood vessels? How quickly does the system recover? And what information does this give us about its general recuperative powers? What is the efficiency of arteries at the extremities of the body? And how does this affect the rest of the circulatory system? What relation is there between metabolism and the condition of the heart? Search for clues. Question and question again. The answers come slowly. But the important thing is that the answers do come, and the vital store of knowledge grows day by day.
See you again next year. Next year.
We hope.
Nice to have seen you again, Judge.
We'll work on that one.
Dr. Keyes, are you ready to check over the list for tomorrow's examination?
Lieutenant Bly, Dean Deal, Clyde Haynes, Dr. Crawford, Ellen Kennedy.
It's been an exhausting day at the laboratory for the guinea pigs as well as for the scientists. 500 patient citizens of Minnesota and the dedicated scientific team out at Gate 27 are on the track of a killer. As research continues, the scientists are learning more about the chemistry of man, about his personality patterns, about his working and living habits, and the effect of all these upon the well-being of the heart. It's a long, tedious road ahead, but the eventual rewards are great for us all. So far, Dr. Ansel Keyes and his staff are not ready to draw any flat conclusions about their work. There is much more to be learned. Recent evidence does seem to refute the widespread belief that overweight is a primary cause of coronary disease. But beyond that, they are cautious about predictions. It may take another 5, 10, or 20 years, but someday they hope to be able to foretell with reasonable accuracy which men are likely to develop cardiovascular disease, and in time to prevent it. Actually, it's only within the past few centuries that medical science has made such tremendous strides in eradicating the diseases of man. Already, some of the dread killers of yesterday, smallpox, diphtheria, cholera, are virtually non-existent in our country. And it may be only a matter of time before the cripplers of today, heart disease, polio, cancer, are also brought under control. But it's only through the continuing search that is going on at the University of Minnesota and at universities and laboratories throughout the world that the answers will be found and the hope for a better future fulfilled.